Many people are not getting the sleep they need. Under sleep-deprived conditions, it's not just that people are more likely to engage in conflict with their partner, but they're also more likely to engage in the very types of toxic relationship behaviors like hostility and cynicism. You don't want to become so sleep-deprived that you're craving sleep more than sex. One study showed that for each extra hour of sleep a woman got, there was a 14% increase in her desire for intimacy. Sex suffers when couples don't pay attention to their sleep needs.
You don't want to do that at the expense of that connection time. I'm going to admit something on my sleep schedule. What if the most radical performance enhancer isn't another biohack, but protecting the hours you spend unconscious? My guest today is one of the world's leading voices on how sleep shapes resilience, relationships, leadership, and long-term health. Dr. Wendy Troxel is a clinical psychologist, internationally recognized sleep scientist, and the author of Sharing the Covers, Every Couple's Guide to Better Sleep. Her research has influenced work policy, school start time legislation, and how high performers rethink grind culture. She has testified before lawmakers, advised Fortune 500 leaders, and translated rigorous science into strategies real people can use in the messy middle of life. Today, we're going to treat sleep like a continuity plan for your brain and body, how to build redundancy into routines, shorten recovery windows after stress, and protect what truly matters: cognition, emotional regulation, immune function, and when everything screams for more output. If you want more focus, better decisions at altitude, literal or metaphorical, lower burnout risk, and stronger relationships, this conversation is base camp. Dr. Wendy Troxel, welcome to Seek Your Summit.
Thank you for having me. This is really exciting to be here with you.
I know, it's so fun. Wendy and I, for all of you listening, met at an event about a year ago now.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, and totally hit it off. So it's been awesome that I get to have her here today. So thank you, thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start with, what personal or research moment made you realize sleep isn't just a health topic? It's a social, relational, and performance lever.
That's a great question. I think that it really probably came very early on in my career. At the beginning of my career, I was studying sleep in military populations, and specifically, I was really interested not only in the sleep of service members after they returned from war. This was during the time of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, but it was also really interested in the sleep of their family members, and particularly their spouses, because I've always been interested in sort of the social context of sleep. And I had so many aha moments when I conducted my first large-scale study among military couples in which the partner had recently returned from Iraq or Afghanistan. I learned so much from that experience about the profound ways that sleep affects every system in the body and also the couple and family system. And these were incredibly resilient humans, both the service member and their partner. They had been through so much. These were extended deployments, usually involving combat, high levels of combat. And to see what both the service member and the partner's journeys were, how they adapted during these extended deployments, and also sort of the joy and challenges that they faced upon reunification, and how sleep was really core to so much of that. I mean, their stories were really so powerful and impactful to me about how vulnerable the night in specific was. And it really, both during deployment when, there was a threat all around, and nighttime is a vulnerable time in general for humans, but also upon returning, it really highlighted for both members of the couple how important the night was, both for their opportunity to reconnect and share that bond, but also the challenges that they faced because the service member had often come back changed in some ways, and the partner too had changed as he or she had been carrying on the household for months on end. And it really, again, raised for me just how emblematic the night and sleep is for every aspect of our health and functioning and our relationship health. And it really spoke to me that sleep is a window into some of our times of greatest vulnerability, but also strength.
Yeah. I think of like sleep for me personally and just being in some of the environments that I've been in.
Yeah.
Right? Like when you're sleeping at base camp at Everest and the ice moans and creaks and whatever, you're just like, am I going to fall a crevasse just on this tent or whatever? And then you come home and you're kind of, then you get used to that. And you're like, how do I get back into this space, which is actually way more comfortable, but it doesn't have the movement or the sounds or the different pieces?
Well, you learn to cope and deal with, trained vigilance in appropriate environments. And then there's also a learning that happens when you return home of like what it's like to feel safe and secure again. And that's often a transition for service members as well as people like you who do crazy things on mountaintops and have to come home to a comfy bed.
Right. I'm like, I don't have to put a snowsuit on to go to the bathroom. I'm like, come on.
This is far too easy.
Who does this? Like, where does this happen? Why is the who we sleep next to variable so often overlooked in mainstream, like media and everything?
Yeah, it's been overlooked for so long until it's not, and it's the spotlight, and it's often under headlines of, so-and-so is engaging in a sleep divorce, so it's really sensationalized. I think the reason it's been overlooked is really due to how the science of sleep evolved. Historically, and sleep is a relatively young science, it's been around for 70, 80 years, so from a scientific perspective, that's a pretty young science. But throughout the history of sleep scientists have traditionally studied sleep at the level of the individual. So if you think about what we typically do in a sleep lab study, we bring an individual into the laboratory, we isolate them as much as possible under these very tightly controlled conditions, and we measure their sleep in this void, but free of disruptions and noise and movement of a partner. But that's really not how sleep in the wild looks. And I study sleep in the wild, in the real world, where it is often shared. So I think it's the fact that we're just starting to notice the social context of sleep as a culture and as a society, and the fact that it's been overlooked is really an artifact of how it's been studied as a science. And I've really sought throughout my career to change that lens, to really look at the social aspect of sleep, because in fact it is for most adults. About 66% of adults do share a bed with a partner at least some of the time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I would have thought that would have even been higher, believe it or not. I don't know why, but.
Yeah.
66%.
66%, yeah.
Right. So, honey, you're coming to my sleep study. We're doing this together.
I think the lab techs are definitely not interested in that. So that's not happening in the sleep lab, but luckily we have technology now that we can do a lot of this stuff in people's homes and in their natural environment, including while sharing a bed.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. The
Which
data
would make way more sense because that's what's actually happening.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so when we think of sleep, right, and you have chronic sleep issues, it starts eroding resilience for sure. And you have cognition, emotional regulation, hormone balance. Like, what are some of the early signs for people to realize maybe this is my sleep that's causing this problem?
That's a great question, because I think if more people were aware of the sort of hidden and not so hidden signals that are, really the body and mind's way of screaming, you need more sleep. If we could become more aware, we could really address the problem much more effectively. So I would say probably the first signal, the early warning sign, are changes in mood and emotion regulation. Well, actually, the first side effect of sleep deprivation is sleepiness. So you will feel sleepy, fatigued. You might also feel sort of emotionally raw, irritable, cranky. You might lash out at your spouse or partner or child. So it's that inability to regulate your emotions. I think that's really what people experience first, but they might attribute it to something else. They might say, oh, it's just the stress at work, or the fact that maybe I'm depressed or I'm having issues with my relationship, but not recognizing that potentially the root cause is that your body is just screaming for sleep. Beyond the mental health and emotion regulation effects, which are pretty immediate, you can see that, within a night of insufficient sleep, we do start to see these cognitive changes very quickly as well. So you might feel this mental fog or forgetfulness, your memory suffers, your attention and concentration suffers. That tends to happen over a more protracted time compared to the immediate emotional effects, but we do see those quite quickly as well. And of course, when people experience jet lag and they're traveling for work, those cognitive issues are quite problematic as well. And then it's really the physical signs that, first you'll maybe start to feel these sort of subclinical symptoms of being sort of fatigued or malaise. You might feel like you have a cold coming on, and in fact you might, because when we're sleep deprived, our immune systems are compromised, making us more vulnerable to common illnesses and infections such as the common cold or flu. So you might get some of those symptoms and just feeling that overall, run down experience of, fatigue and not being at your best.
I'm going to admit something on my sleep schedule. So, they recommended, I don't know, wherever I heard it, 6 to 8 hours of sleep. And I like to be an overachiever. So I'm thinking I'm going to survive on 6 hours of sleep and I'm going to be awesome. And that just it was like a badge of honor that I could function with less sleep for some reason.
For you and many.
And then I read this book about some athletes needing 9 to 10 hours of sleep. And I'm like, what? That was the first time I was realized sleep is part of performance.
Yes.
To me, it was always the opposite. And so when I allowed myself to start sleeping in longer, if I had big workouts, big days in the mountains, I would need 9 hours of sleep. And I am a solid 8-hour sleeper. 6 hours just does not work for me. Yeah. And so I had to change what that meant for me to be okay with it.
Yeah.
But to anybody listening, if you think it's a badge of honor that you function on 4 to 6 hours of sleep, you're missing out on how you could really perform.
Absolutely. I mean, that's really the paradigm shift that, I'm hoping has really happened culturally, that this idea, that you sleep when you're dead or sleep is for the weak. Again, I had to address this early on in my career, particularly dealing with military populations where that's a really entrenched belief, and instead turn it on its head to show that no, in fact, sleep is the cornerstone, the foundation of high performance in highly stressful, highly demanding and high-risk environments. And now, honestly, the recommendation is for most adults, and it changes throughout the lifespan, we recommend somewhere around 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. But as sleep scientists and clinicians, we've actually moved away from being so dogmatic about everybody needs, 8 hours of sleep, because we do recognize that there are individual differences, and some people need more than 8 hours of sleep, particularly athletes. The more you're training, the more you need that recovery, and sleep is the quintessential recovery strategy that the body has. So more sleep is often necessary among athletes. But we also are trying to recognize that, yes, there are individual differences in people's need for sleep duration, though most people do need more than 6 hours to function at their best. But healthy sleep actually goes well beyond sleep duration, right? It's also about quality and the regularity of your sleep. Are you getting enough sleep at consistent timing on a regular basis? That's really a sign of sort of holistic sleep health.
Yeah. And I'm going to throw out the Whoop band for me because that really shifted my sleeping, right? Because you wake up in the morning and it gives you these numbers of how long you're in REM sleep, or did you get to bed within the same amount of time? And you got these little sleep scores or whatever. And for a while I was pretty addicted to my sleep score, but I stopped wearing that device for a little bit just to give my brain a relaxation from tracking everything I do in this world.
There's wonderful benefits of sleep tracking technology, lots of devices out there. We've come a long way. And the question is really, how is it working for you? And it sounds like there was a time where it was working for you, and then it got a little obsessive and anxiety provoking. And that's when we need to turn inwards and just kind of look at our internal guidance and our internal barometers of how well did you think you slept last night? Because honestly, anything that is making you more anxious about your sleep is not serving you. So there's a sort of tricky balance that people need to find with how the utility of sleep trackers, because they can be quite effective in modifying certain behaviors if used effectively. But if what they're really doing is either confirming that you had a terrible night of sleep, which you already knew, and it's just like somebody telling you did a bad job when you already knew you did a bad job, or making you feel more anxious. And anxiety is antithetical to the sleep state, so it's not serving its purpose. So that's when you take a little vacations from your tracker.
Yeah, that's when you're like, thankfully my battery died. And
yeah,
so now
exactly.
I can't use this anymore. And I didn't even know. It's like one of those like anxieties that creep up on you. But then when the battery died, I was like, oh, we're going to take a little break from this.
It's a little freeing suddenly. You realize how bound you were to it.
This took up a little more space in my life than it needed. So there we go. You call sleeping together co-sleeping for adults. When is the push to share a bed strengthening connection, and when does it silently tax everybody in the relationship?
I would say that sharing a bed is strengthening a relationship if it's working for both of you, and if you're both sleeping well. Now, there are many benefits of co-sleeping with a loved one and significant other. There's the psychological benefits of feeling safe and secure, and that comfort that many of us gain from sharing a bed with a partner. There are also some physiological benefits. We know, for instance, that human touch and cuddling and intimacy are all associated with the release of the hormone oxytocin, otherwise known as the love hormone. Oxytocin has very powerful anxiolytic or anxiety-reducing effects, so it may facilitate feelings of calm and help downregulate stress responses, which can be very facilitative for a good night of sleep. So if you're sleeping well with a partner and you're reaping those benefits, then absolutely that shared time together where it's just the two of you can be very sacred space, and it can really strengthen the connection. Where it's not strengthening the connection is if either partner is not getting the sleep they need. Because guess what happens? When we don't get the sleep we need, then we end up experiencing all of these consequences that we just talked about, including immediately these emotional consequences. And who are we most likely to take out our, bad behaviors with? It's our partner. So we're more likely to lash out. We're more likely to engage in conflict. And my research and others has shown that under sleep-deprived conditions, it's not just that people are more likely to engage in conflict with their partner, but they're also more likely to engage in the very types of toxic relationship behaviors like hostility and cynicism that have been identified by relationship researchers like John Gottman as being the most toxic and predictive of relationship rupture in a relationship. So, you're not serving yourself or your partner if you're suffering through sleeping together, if it's hurting either or both of your sleep. That's where we need to have couples be able to have the dialogue about what's working and what's not working in the bedroom when it comes to sleep, not just sex, and find solutions that are going to work for them. And there's lots of strategies. There's not a one-size-fits-all sleeping arrangement that is, predictive of relational bliss. In fact, that is not true, as much as people believe it. What we do know, however, is that not sleeping well can be a signal towards relationship demise, because when you're not sleeping well, it's very hard to be the partner you want to be.
No, I agree with that. I think we were on a hike once together and we were talking about sleep and how sometimes making sure that you have that time that you come together as a couple at night.
Yes.
So maybe you start in the same bed and have conversations for 30 minutes or so. And then if you're not co-sleeping together well, then say, okay, now I'm going to go to bed in the other room so we both get a good night's sleep. But you don't want to do that at the expense of that connection time.
Exactly, because like I said from the beginning, that nighttime is a really powerful and important window into sort of our timing of being most vulnerable. It's sacred time throughout history and throughout culture. And it's often the only time that couples in our busy lives have to connect and just be with our partner. So I always tell couples who, ask me about strategies if they are thinking about sleeping apart, or couples in my clinic, that if you're going to sleep apart from your partner, preserve that quality time in bed together before you go your separate ways, including if you're on different sleep schedules. Just try to make time for each other. That time together is sacred time. It's when you don't hopefully have the distractions of the day, provided that you're not both on your phones or your tablets in bed, where you can actually connect and unwind, talk to each other, tell each other what you're appreciative about the other person. It can be a really powerful moment, and it doesn't have to take forever. It doesn't have to take the whole night long, but it's preserving that critical time before either partner goes to sleep.
Okay, so now you have this partner, right? You want to sleep together, but one of them wants a hard mattress, one wants a soft mattress, one sleeps warm, one sleeps cold. Like, there's so many factors to that. Is there like the magic mattress out there, or what do you recommend for people?
Technology is actually, helping couples out in many, many ways by providing these individualized experiences, even while sharing a bed. But I do find this is one of the reasons why this area is so fascinating for me to study. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous, the presumptions that we have that just because you fall in love with another human being, that you're automatically going to be compatible for the roughly 8 hours per day that you spend in bed. That's about a third of our lives we spend asleep. And again, just because you fall in love with another human being doesn't mean you're going to be perfectly compatible across all those dimensions: temperature, comfort level of the mattress,
Firmness.
your schedule,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I think we're, making too many assumptions and expectations about compatibility in bed that can make it challenging. And it makes it hard for couples to even open the dialogue of like, oh, we have these differences. It doesn't have to mean anything about our feelings for each other. We just might need to compromise or work through these differences, or leverage technology like these individualized mattress preferences now that allow for differences in thermoregulation or differences in mattress firmness even. So there are options out there. But again, we have to come back to, we are all individuals, and we are trying to share a relatively small amount of space for a large proportion of our lives. So understandably, you're not going to be completely harmonious across all dimensions necessarily, and it's okay to work those through.
Yeah. Okay, so that term, catching up on the weekends. Like, is that meaningful repair or an illusion that's like masking accumulated debt? What's your thought?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the, holy grail that so many people, live their lives by. If I'm going to sleep deprive myself 5 days a week and then pay it back on the 2 days of the weekend. And, there's going to be a time in all of our lives where life happens and we're just not able to get the sleep we need. And so some amount of catch-up sleep is a reasonable compensatory strategy. But it's really important for people to think of it as just that. It is a compensatory strategy, not a solution to the problem. And if you think about it as a bank account, if you're constantly withdrawing 5 days a week from your bank account, it is very difficult to, deposit your money back to sort of make up for the debt that you've accumulated across five days in just 2 days, particularly if the bank has limits on how much you can deposit at a time. And the reality is, the analogy with sleep is that we simply can't generate enough sleep on the weekend to truly pay back, multi-hours of sleep debt that accrue 5 days a week in a 2-day time frame. Furthermore, that tendency to sleep deprive and then play catch up is leading to a highly irregular sleep schedule.
Right.
And recent research, including a huge study was using the UK Biobank registry, which is a huge data set, found that actually the regularity of sleep, so do you fairly consistently go to bed and wake up at about the same time every day of the week, that was as important, if not more important, in predicting longevity than sleep duration.
Oh, wow.
So it's not just that it honestly doesn't work. You don't pay back enough. Again, it's a short-term compensatory strategy, but it's not a long-term solution. But it's also a pattern that is making you specifically at risk for a really critical dimension of sleep health, which is the regularity of sleep. By definition, if you're catching up on the weekends, you have a highly irregular sleep pattern, and we know that that comes with specific health consequences.
That makes sense. Okay, so as you being a sleep specialist,
Okay.
what's your non-negotiable sleep stack? What does that look like for you?
All right. I know I'm in the complete minority, but I do not look at my phone in bed.
Good
Not
for
ever.
you.
It's actually only recent that I even have my phone in the bedroom, but I have a rule, and actually I got this rule from another sleep colleague of mine, Dr. Michael Grandner, who counsels his clients that if you're going to use your phone in the bedroom, I love this, you have to be standing while using it.
Oh,
And
there
so
you go.
I decided I need to have my phone in the bedroom because I have children who are all over the place, and for just in case they needed to reach me, I want the phone close by. But I didn't want to go down that slippery slope to allowing myself to scroll through my phone while in bed. So if I'm going to use my phone, I have my feet on the floor and I'm standing. I think it's one of the greatest techniques because it really is this little barrier that makes it that much harder to do the
Doomsday scroll.
Exactly, which is really in bed. Okay, so, avoiding, using my phone in bed specifically. I'm also very routinized with my sleep routine. Again, I have a life. If I'm going out to a concert or a show, sure, I'm going to stay up later than usual. But in general, I do try to stick to a regular sleep routine. I see it immediately in the quality of my sleep that I judge internally, as well as my sleep tracker. If I veer from my regular schedule, then it's going to manifest in poor quality sleep. And I'll feel it. It will also manifest in how I feel during the day. I will not have the energy I want to have. My mood won't be as stable as I want it to be. I won't be able to think clearly. So I really see those direct connections. And finally, for me, a non-negotiable is exercise.
Okay.
We know that there are strong connections, between being physically active and sleep from a physical standpoint. You tire the body to a certain extent. It prepares the body for rest and recovery at night. But in addition, for me, exercise is the most powerful stress management tool. And given the very strong connections we know exist between stress and sleep, I want every tool in my strategy and my, armament of tools to manage stress, because stress isn't going anywhere. Everybody experiences stress. It's how we manage it, so it doesn't manage you. And so exercise is a non-negotiable in my life. It is how I, get through difficult things in life so that I can sleep and recover at night.
I like that. Now define what exercise means to you, because exercise means a lot of things, and especially for people who live in Park City.
Oh, yes.
So just to let you know, when I first moved to Park City, I went to one exercise class a day and felt pretty good about myself. And then I realized I was the only person going to one class a day because everybody else there was going to multiple classes a day.
Okay.
So let's define what exercise means.
Okay, we live in a crazy world if Jenn Drummond is feeling, inadequate at an exercise class. Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, I will say, I think we're getting way too rigid about, what form of exercise is the right form of exercise. I say do what you will do regularly. Mm-hmm. And for me, I'm a runner. I run. It's sort of, I can do it anywhere. I can do it easily. I'm, motivated to do it. I'm usually trying to train for something just because that keeps me motivated. But so running's my primary go-to, but I also love yoga. I'm trying to get better at lifting weights. And I swim occasionally too. But it really just matters.
It's moving. Getting your heart rate.
We don't need to make it that complicated.
Yep.
It's moving every day and making you feel good. And I know that when I exercise, doing the types of exercise that I love, that makes me feel good. So I'm less tied up in the right form of exercise. I know what works for me and what is good for mind and body, and that's, I want to be efficient with my choices.
Yeah. What is your take on naps?
Naps are really interesting. I'm actually participating in a expert panel right now where we're looking at all of the data on napping.
Yeah.
And, the results aren't fully in, but basically I think the early consensus is, naps are perfectly fine, even healthy, depending on why you're doing it. So people who take a, relatively short, usually less than an hour nap on a regular basis because, they feel good after their nap. They feel cognitively refreshed, emotionally refreshed, and they're able to sort of go about their day. That does not seem to have any sort of health consequences. In fact, there can be many benefits of it. The problems arise with naps and why there has been some epidemiologic research showing that naps are associated with some negative health outcomes and even mortality. I think it's really because it's a conflation of why people are napping. Mm-hmm. So some people are napping because their sleep is so compromised, either due to another co-occurring medical condition, which compromises their sleep, or because they have some co-occurring sleep disorder, such as sleep apnea, which is compromising their sleep quality on a regular basis and is itself a risk factor for downstream chronic health conditions and mortality. So there's this conflation of the why, that they're napping because their sleep quality is so compromised, or for people who are just not allowing themselves enough sleep at night, they're napping, because their bodies are they have to. They're sort of unintentionally napping. That's where we see health consequences. For most people, though, if a nap feels good, if you feel refreshed after, and if it's done, if you have your nap generally earlier in the day is better.
Earlier in the day. Is there a length?
I think for most people, it's somewhere around 30 minutes to an hour seems to be sort of where you get that sweet spot of feeling refreshed without feeling that grogginess.
Yeah.
The one caveat I'll say is people for whom we generally recommend not napping are those who have insomnia. So these are people who are regularly struggling to fall asleep or stay asleep or who have chronic poor sleep quality. And so for them, really the most effective treatment is really about maximizing their drive for sleep, their pressure for sleep at nighttime during their nocturnal sleep episode. So for people who have insomnia, we generally say avoid naps. We want to really consolidate your sleep to nighttime because they're already struggling with the ability to sleep at night. So that's the one caveat of a group that I would probably recommend not napping.
And what are your thoughts on sleep aids like melatonin and those different pieces?
Melatonin is a really tricky one. It's widely used now in both adults and children. Oh. All I can say is the evidence is not great. In fact, melatonin was never designed or intended as a sleep aid in the traditional sense. What melatonin is, and in fact is very good for, is it's a time shifter. It's known as a chronobiotic, meaning that it helps to adjust your circadian rhythm. So when your body feels sleepy. Mm-hmm. That's different than a sleep aid, which is actually trying to put you to sleep. So where melatonin is very effective are for things like jet lag, when you're shifting time zones, or for shift workers who have to sleep in times that are misaligned with their internal biological clocks. So it can be very effective for that. For most people, the research shows that there's, little to no benefit of taking melatonin at bedtime as a sleep aid. One caveat to that, for older adults, people over age 65 and older, we do see a dampening in natural melatonin production because our bodies naturally produce melatonin as we get older. There may be some benefits for sleep among older adults, but generally speaking, the evidence is not good for melatonin as a sleep aid in adults, and I would really caution people who are using melatonin for their children on a chronic basis. We really don't have long-term studies on the impact of taking an exogenous hormone that our bodies naturally produce, and sometimes in very, very high doses, what we would call supraphysiologic doses, what we see in the grocery store, at the pharmacy, over the counter in the US, these are often doses in, 5, 10 milligrams, which are exponentially higher than the amount of melatonin that our bodies naturally produce. Mm. So why would we be giving that to our children when it truly is untested in a longitudinal framework? I think the answer why we're doing it, I think many people are desperate, and I get that, but I will say that there are more effective, safer options, particularly for treating children's sleep problems. So there is help out there, but I think parents need to be informed that melatonin or any pill is not their only strategy for supporting their child's sleep.
Yeah. So somebody listening today is struggling with their sleep. What's the first step they take?
The first step is to sort of, self-monitor. What is it that you're struggling with your sleep? Because sleep can go awry in lots of different ways. There are over 70 different sleep disorders in our diagnostic Bible for sleep. So it's not just insomnia. It's not only sleep apnea. There's a lot of things that can go awry. So really, even just in a paper and pencil diary or in a notebook, start jotting down what's going on with your sleep. Are you having trouble falling asleep? Are you having difficulty staying asleep? Is your sleep quality just of poor and non-refreshing quality? Do you snore? Do you feel twitchy movements in your legs at night? These are many of the symptoms, just a collection of them, there are many more, that might be symptoms of different types of sleep problems. And then how do you feel during your day? Are you feeling like you're dragging throughout your day? Do you have low energy? Are you needing to take naps just because you can't get through your day? Are you grabbing for 4 cups of coffee?
Carbohydrates. That's how I know I'm dying.
That's what you,
right. I'm like, I need the sugar. And I'll notice I'm like, I'm tired.
There's some really amazing, gorgeous laboratory studies that have shown if you sleep deprive people and then you put them in a laboratory setting with a buffet of options, what are the foods people go for when they're sleep deprived? It is those high carb, high fat, sugary foods. We're not grabbing the carrots at that point.
No.
It's because your body's under stress.
Yeah.
So sleep deprivation is a powerful stressor. So what do you do to alleviate that stress? We go for carbohydrates. Back to sort of what do you do if you're sort of suspecting a sleep problem? First, notice what are those sleep symptoms you're having, and then go see your doctor about it. Describe your symptoms, and really, you do have to advocate for yourselves.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, in most physician training has very minimal training in medical school about sleep, despite the fact that we spend about a third of our lives asleep. So it's really important to advocate for yourself, to not accept, the first recommendation, which might be a pill, because if you're having insomnia, which is the most common sleep problem that people have, in fact, the most effective strategy for treating insomnia does not come in a pill. It is a therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. It works. There are lots of modalities of delivery of this type of treatment, both in person, with an individual. There are group modalities. There are even digital modalities, app-based, that have been proven to be effective. So, don't be discouraged or don't feel like, if I tell my doctor I have a sleep problem, they're just going to either prescribe me a pill or tell me I have sleep apnea. There's lots of options that are out there. But first, speaking to a professional, if you're having problems that last more than a month and are happening most nights a week. Again, because transient sleep disturbances are normal. And I also want to normalize that for people, especially with all the tracking that we have out there. Every night of sleep is not going to be a perfect night, right?
Yes.
That is an unrealistic goal.
It is not attainable. I have tried, and just said
believe
no.
me, we have survived evolution. That one bad night of sleep is not the thing that's going to kill you. We're talking about chronic sleep disturbance. That's where we want people to pay more attention and get effective treatment, not fly-by-night hacks or medications that are unneeded or that have side effects when there are better treatments that exist.
Okay, so I travel a lot.
Yeah.
Is there any hacks to these massive time changes and the jet lag that you have that helps?
Particularly with large time zone shifts, this is hard on your body.
Yeah.
I mean, my go-to strategies, the things that are most evidence-based in dealing with jet lag are, number one, when you travel matters. Try to avoid, if possible,
The red eye.
The red eye. It's just not good for the body. I do it sometimes because it's the only way I can fit everything in, but it's rough on the body. Whatever you do, the key to adjusting to jet lag is really trying to get as much morning sunlight in your new time zone as quickly as possible. Be physically active. Physical activity is another strategy to help sort of both diminish jet lag symptoms like malaise and fatigue, but also help adjust to the new time zone, particularly if you exercise outside. That's a time with jet lag to use melatonin. It's best to talk with your doctor about when you should take melatonin, because melatonin as a time shifter, you don't take it right at bedtime. You actually take it several hours before your desired bedtime. There are also apps that can help sort of you manage sort of when you should take melatonin and shift your time when you're experiencing jet lag. Also, as quickly as possible, there are a number of factors, not just our sleep-wake cycles, that govern our circadian rhythms and help us to adjust to new time zones. Other things like our meal times are really critical, timekeepers, which help to regulate our circadian rhythms. So as much as possible, when you get to a new time zone, adjust to their meal times as well. And it might mean, eating a smaller meal because, if it's morning their time, but it's, 2 a.m. your time. Yeah. You're not going to be particularly hungry, but have a light bite just to get yourself on that rhythm. And use caffeine judiciously and wisely earlier in the day so it doesn't impact your sleep at night. Similarly with napping. If you're going to nap to sort of deal with some of the sleep debt that might occur because of the travel, just do it earlier in the day, and shorter is better so it doesn't compromise your ability to fall asleep in the new time zone at night.
Oh my gosh, I'm learning so much. I'm going to listen to this episode myself a few times. I love it. Okay, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. We had some people write in some questions.
Okay.
And so we're going to start handling some of these just to make sure everybody gets their question answered. So number one is, are married people just lying about sleeping better together?
Oh, it's a good question. I think it probably depends. I think that there is a lot of sort of stigma around the marital bed, and for so long, it was taboo for couples to, admit to maybe preferring to sleep apart from their partner. And we're starting to see that shift change, that, many even happy couples are saying, guess what? Sleeping apart is the key to our happy relationship. That said, so I think, in the past, yes, maybe people were just sort of sheepish or, felt that like there was only one right answer to that question. If you're married, you must prefer to sleep with your partner. I think those attitudes are changing, and some people are openly admitting that they love their partner dearly and sleep better while sleeping apart. And I also think that there are many people who really do cherish and benefit sleeping with a partner, but there's not a one-size-fits-all sleeping strategy for all couples, and we've got to do away with this shame and taboo and beliefs about how couples should spend this critically important time together. It's really the couple's decision that matters most.
Ooh, I like that answer. Okay, this one's a little spicy.
Okay.
Do marriages die when sleep becomes more important than sex?
Oh, sleep and sex are very interesting sort of interconnection. And no, I don't think that marriages die when sleep becomes more important than sex. I do think, however, that sex suffers when couples don't pay attention to their sleep needs. Mm-hmm. So we know that sleep is actually a powerful aphrodisiac. In fact, for women, one study showed that for each extra hour of sleep a woman got relative to her own pattern, there was a 14% increase in her desire for intimacy.
Oh, wow.
And there's also strong correlations between quality of sleep and sexual satisfaction and desire. So sleep does benefit sex. And it's also true, kind of the, sex therapists sort of most commonly heard sort of reason for, couples, not engaging in sex is the "I'm too tired for sex, honey" excuse. And that's not just an excuse. People are busy, and many people are not getting the sleep they need. Mm-hmm. So no, I don't think that, sleep becoming a priority is sacrificing sex. Mm-hmm. I do think that for far too long, sleep was sacrificed, mm-hmm. and sex, as well as many other dimensions of relationship health, were also being sacrificed. So as we see this paradigm shift in our culture where sleep is finally starting to get the recognition and value that it needs, mm-hmm. That extends to our relationships. And so if you're still somebody who's saying, like, I don't need to sleep, I'll sleep when I'm dead, sleep is for the weak, well, then maybe don't do it for yourself, but do it for your partner.
Yeah.
Because your relationship will benefit, and, you don't want, to become so sleep deprived that you're, craving sleep more than sex. You want to satisfy your sleep needs and be able to enjoy and participate in sex with your partner.
Perfect answer. I like that. Okay. Are early start times the reason some kids hate school?
Oh, you're tapping into a topic that is a near and dear to my heart, and that I've fought for vociferously. Yes, early school start times. The average school start time across the U.S. is about 8 a.m. Many schools, including in Park City, are much earlier than 8 a.m. And the problem with early school start times is they are in direct conflict with teenagers' natural circadian rhythms, which specifically during adolescence, we see a shift in circadian rhythms such that adolescents become natural night owls for this developmental period. It doesn't last forever, but they are naturally, biologically predisposed to stay up later and sleep in later. So they're not just like lazy or willful or disobedient. They literally, their bodies are primed to stay up later and sleep in later. And just at the time that we see this biological shift in their schedules, we start sending them to school excessively early. So the buses might be picking them up at 6:30 a.m. So that's the equivalent of that's the middle of their biological night from a circadian rhythm perspective, because they're about 2 hours shifted. So a 6:30 a.m. wake up for a teenager is about a 4:30 a.m. wake up for an adult.
Oh.
So just think about how you feel when you're waking up at 4:30 a.m. So yes, are we surprised that they're dreading school, that they're suffering through school? In fact, some study from the Pew Research Center showed that some of the words that teens use to describe themselves, the top words, were things like bored, tired, and stressed.
Yeah.
And when we're not allowing them the opportunity to get the sleep that they so desperately need, what do we expect from their outcomes, including their motivation for school, as well as their mental and physical health? So, it's really why I have fought so strongly for aligning our school start times with the absolutely robust science. There's kind of few areas in my career as a scientist that I get to say, okay, this is conclusive. We've known this for a while. This is what the policy should be. Mm-hmm. School start times is one area where the evidence is clear. Teenagers do better when schools start later.
Wow. Wow. So are we giving teens depression by forcing them to wake up at 6 a.m. to get ready?
Well, to say we're giving them depression, we always have to be careful of correlation versus causation. I can tell you that there are very strong causal links from laboratory studies of the impact of sleep deprivation on a chronic basis, how that impacts mental health and functioning, and also sort of areas of the brain that are so critically tied with mental health. So there's certainly plausible causal evidence to suggest that early school start times, which are a direct impediment to teenagers getting the sleep they need, that could be contributing to the mental health crisis we see in teens. It certainly isn't helping them. Come on, tell me in any world that depriving kids of the sleep that they need would be good for their mental health. There's just absolutely no evidence to support that. And in fact, we even know from during the pandemic when schools were, not in regular session, where schedules were shifted for hybrid, and there was a lot of stress going on, mind you. This was not a perfect setting. But teenagers, in a study of mine that we conducted, teenagers during the pandemic, when they were in hybrid schools, were actually getting 2 hours more sleep per night.
Wow.
So we do have evidence from natural experiments, such as during the pandemic when, across the country, school start times changed because of the move to hybrid or completely remote. And we showed that even during the stressful period of a pandemic, teens were getting significantly more sleep because of the removal of the primary barrier to adequate sleep opportunity, which is early school start times.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to answer this question myself. Is good sleep unaffordable to most people? And this is a hard one because I sit there listening to what you're just saying, and my kids go to summer school, and they go to summer school because it allows them to start later, right? But they're allowed to go to summer school because I'm home.
Yes.
Right? So then that gives them that opportunity that a family that has traditional working hours and has to do that, they don't have that opportunity, so now the kids don't have the choice to start school late.
I couldn't have said it better myself, Jen. It is why we have policy. Policy impacts all, and we want to do best for all students, including those that don't have the options that our privileged children do. I did the same thing, because the policy wasn't aligned with good science, and I'm a sleep researcher, and I couldn't stand to do what I saw was abusive to my own children, which is to wake them up at 6 a.m. every morning. I had the options to send them to summer school so that they could, have late start. We had, the ability to drive them into school. But that's because we have the, schedule flexibility, the access to a vehicle. So we want policy that affects all and that benefits all children, not just those that have the choice to be more flexible. That's really why I'm so committed to it, because I can make alternative arrangements for my children, but this is about doing what's best for all teenagers.
Yeah, and they're all our children. I look at all of them like, you're all my kids.
Yeah.
My house is full of children all the time because I'm like, you're all here all the time, and I'm perfectly okay with it.
And they're all future contributing members to our society. So why wouldn't we give them the foundation, the base camp that they need to be successful, healthy, productive humans?
Yeah. Do companies make more money when employees sleep better?
Oh, great question. Well, my colleagues and I at RAND actually did this comprehensive, it was the first comprehensive economic analysis of the impact of sleep loss on 5 of the world's largest economies, including the U.S. And what we found was that sleep loss, so sleeping less than 6 hours per night across the population in the U.S. costs the U.S. economy about $411 billion per year. And we actually did the study, 5-6 years ago, so, account for inflation, it's probably higher than that now. But what we also found through our economic modeling was that small changes can actually make a very big difference. If we simply sort of moved the needle to have more of the population sleeping, 6.5 as opposed to 6 hours, we would have substantial economic gains as a result. So it's not even about going from, a sleep-deprived population to everybody sleeping 8 hours per night, but even small changes can make a big difference at a, nationwide economic level. And at a company level as well, it can absolutely make a big difference. And it's why more and more companies are now starting to invest in sleep as a part of their corporate wellness.
That was my next question. Should businesses invest in their employees' sleep?
Absolutely. We need to do it in the right ways. We need to do it with evidence-backed ways. We need to do it in ways that are not punitive, that, if you're, having your employees track their sleep and they're not achieving some magic number, that they're not, penalized for that, but we want to give the support and resources to support healthy sleep, including offering treatments for those who have diagnosable sleep disorders. We want to send cultural messages from the top down that sleep is valued and is a critical component of success and productivity and performance, not a sign of laziness or lack of productivity. And again, I see this in companies that I've worked with, the changing of the culture top down. Similarly in the military, it really matters if your superiors or your boss is sending you emails at 2 a.m. or is bragging about how productive they are on 4 hours of sleep. That sends a cultural message that undermines the importance of sleep. But when we see companies where the CEOs, the executives are embracing sleep, they're acknowledging that to be where they are, to do what they do, and to do it effectively, they need to get good quality sleep. That's really where we start to see changes in minds and culture that can really make a big difference. And then it also has to manifest in behavior. So not sending the 2 a.m. emails. Not everything is a crisis, actually. Not scheduling meetings, at the crack of dawn when it's not necessary. So really changing both, how we talk about sleep, attitudes about sleep, messaging about sleep, and then some of these behaviors about sleep. There really is a a significant return on investment for companies. And, the very best companies are starting to wake up to that.
Yeah. And let's be honest, we can now schedule emails to go out. So you can write the email and schedule it to go out the next morning at a normal, humane time.
You absolutely can.
Yeah. So do you feel in general, are sleep products a scam?
I don't think that in general they're a scam. I think that the market is booming, and so it is ripe for scammers. It is also, the consumer base is desperate for solutions. So yes, there are certainly products out there that overclaim what they can do, and anything that's going to tell you that it's going to magically make you get 8 hours of sleep per night and increase your deep sleep by X% or your REM sleep by X%. I can tell you honestly, currently we have no strategy that's right now evidence-based that can selectively enhance any single stage of sleep. Now, there are things you can do to reduce stages of sleep, like drink too much alcohol. That will reduce your REM sleep. But right now, the technology, it might be coming, and there's definitely some interesting companies who are working towards using various mechanisms to enhance deep sleep or enhance REM sleep. But right now, we don't have robust evidence to show anything that can selectively enhance a particular stage of sleep. And so I would just be cautious about sort of overpromising. And if it seems too good to be true, it likely is. It kills me. In my clinical work, I see people with insomnia who've been struggling for years and years, and they've tried everything. And, when we get to talking about it, it's sort of like, did you really think if the solution was that simple, you're a smart person, that you wouldn't have found it by now? And yet, their friends are telling them, oh, you've got to try this tea or, this supplement or whatnot, and it's going to magically, change your world. Well, no, people who have significant sleep disturbances are not going to be magically, cured overnight. We don't have that. So be careful about these sort of, very...
Promises.
Over promises, and really think about what does the evidence show, and who is speaking about these messages. We have a lot of influencers out there who truly have no scientific background in sleep, and might be very wise, smart people, but really be aware of what the source is, and and what the potential sort of profit gain for them is.
Fair enough. All right. I'm going to end on this one then. Do expensive pillows actually help with sleeping? I seem like I get marketed every custom pillow out there, and I just want to know, should I buy one of these expensive pillows, or could I just use my normal Bed Bath & Beyond one?
So it doesn't look like I'm slamming any particular, pillows or whatever. I will say in general, sort of pillows or bedding in general, the key factor to consider when choosing a pillow or a mattress is your subjective experience of comfort.
Okay.
Right? It is a subjective experience. And so what you may perceive as being the most comfortable pillow ever may be at a lower price point than the most, expensive luxury pillow. Or maybe you do happen to prefer the most expensive luxury pillow. But at the end of the day, it really is about the subjective experience. Now, there's certain dimensions that you probably want to be aware of. What's it made of? So
you're a side sleeper, back sleeper,
yeah,
or those
these
little
things
details?
sort of positions sort of, matter to some extent, the firmness, the softness, and again, how is it made? Is it environmentally conscious? All these things that, depending on your value, that may matter to you. But at the end of the day, you really need to try it out. And so particularly for, mattresses, I always suggest to people, if you're, shopping for a mattress, make sure that there's a good return policy. Test drive this thing, because you're going to be sleeping on it, or you're going to be spending a lot of time on it, much more than you are any other piece of furniture in your house. So, the company should have a good return policy, because what you might experience in, a 5-minute, testing it out in a store, or if you're ordering it online, you're not even getting to test it out, might not tell you how it's going to feel all night long, every night. So, be willing to return it. Make sure, you look at return policies, and trust your own judgment, because that's, how you experience comfort is entirely you.
Yeah. Man, this episode's been amazing.
Oh, well, it's fun to talk to you.
Thank you. How does the audience reach out to learn more about all things you?
Oh, well, this has been such a pleasure. I am Dr. Wendy Troxel on most social media sites, on LinkedIn, Instagram. My website is wendytroxel.com. I have a couple TEDx talks out there, both on adolescence, sleep and school start times, and one on couples and sleep. So you can check those out. And I'm out and about.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.